Stephen Anderson. I'm one of the founders of EdChat Interactive. Myself, along with Tom Whitby and Mitch Weisberg, are trying to do something different with the typical educational webinar. When we heard about this platform called Shindig and saw what it can do, we really think that it can revolutionize the way that people participate in webinars. These are not your normal sit and get webinars. Our presenters today are going to invite you to participate. You'll even have the opportunity to bring yourself, or for someone to bring you up onto the stage where I am right now, and talk to everybody. So as you can see, you can hear me in the room, and but the other unique things that you have the ability to do is to join up in small groups. So some of you have been doing that. So some people have found you click on someone else's image, your images will be grouped together. And that allows you to talk and speak and chat as a small group. And that's one thing that we're going to encourage you to do throughout the webinar today. That we're gonna hear a little bit of information, and then they're gonna ask you to group up to answer a question, and then afterwards invite folks to come up on stage. So in order to do that, you just again click on somebody else's image, and your images will be joined together so you can form a group. You can have group members. You can have up to 5 in a group. We ask that you keep it at 4 so that we can come around and kind of bounce around to the different to hear your conversations. But we definitely encourage you to meet someone new and to link up and to have a conversation. Some other tips that you'll need to know: if you hover over your image, you have a couple more options there. You can ask questions, you can raise your hand. So as we go throughout the day today, as if you want to be brought up onto the stage when the time is appropriate, go ahead and raise your hand, and that'll cue me in the back end to bring you up onto the stage. You can also ask questions. Now, keep in mind those questions appear on my end, and I'll do my best to try and get you an answer, relay the information. But sometimes that's sometimes that's more difficult than it is. So if you'd like to do that, but please feel free to use that questions button. You can also, you've got your settings there, and we really encourage everybody to go into their settings and turn your webcams on. So there's a wizard in there that you can go through to find your webcam if you have one installed, one available to you, especially if you're on a laptop or other device where you have that available to you. Go ahead and click through that wizard. You also have a mic wizard there. And then another helpful suggestion is if you don't have a headset, or if you're not one, I really encourage you to use one. It cuts down on the background noise when you're in a small group, as their voices will come through your speakers, and then it gets picked up by the mic, and it just gets into this horrible circle of audio. So if you have a headset, now might be the chance to go out into the other room and grab those. So I'm gonna pull myself down, and I'm gonna bring up Tom Whitby, my good friend and business partner, Tom Whitby, who's gonna tell us a little bit more about who you're gonna hear from today.
Thank you, Stephen. Um, I just recently did a webinar with these two gentlemen, and I think you're all going to be very much impressed with what you hear. They are going to engage you, not just with their words, but they're going to engage you by having you come up with your words, and we're going to be bringing some of you up on stage. I would caution you, if you don't have a headset and you're in a small group, to turn your volume down so that it doesn't get into the cycle that it gets into, and you get a lot of reverberation. Today we have with us Dr. Russell Quaglia, friend and colleague, Dr. Mickey Corso, and they're going to be speaking to you about student voice, aspirations, and Santa Claus. This is a very engaging webinar in more ways than one. And I first met Dr. Q when he was keynoting at ASCD. And one of the things that he had mentioned was that he was getting himself involved with Twitter, didn't understand it, as most of us didn't when we first started out. He said he had only about 100 followers, and he wished he had more. And in hearing that, I immediately got on to my Twitter connections. And by his keynote, we had him up to almost 1,000 followers. I don't know if he realizes this, but he's had people following him ever since. He's up to almost 2,000 followers now. So if you're not following him on Twitter, you should be. And his keynote was outstanding. It was not only educational, illuminating, it was also very entertaining because he's a very entertaining guy. With that, I'm going to turn this over to them, and I hope you all enjoy this webinar as much as I've enjoyed it before. Thank you.
He was sleeping. Hey, everybody. Stephen and Tom, thank you very much. I also know there's a couple of people that went through the last hour with us because they assumed that was our practice one. So this one will be even better. But I certainly want to thank Stephen and Tom for this opportunity, and it is an opportunity for us. I am not a big fan of these webinar things, but I've become a fan of this. And I would say this if Tom or Stephen weren't there. It's about as cool as talking to a camera and not having someone next to me other than the mixer, but having a conversation. And this is about having a conversation and learning from each other. So I commend Tom and Stephen on this platform. I think it's great. And know we'll be doing more in the future. So thank you.
Before you get started, just so they know you're not making up the tech phobia thing. When Russ and I, the first Ed chat on Twitter that Russ and I participated in, he said, well, what do I do? I said, well, you go in and you go hashtag Ed chat. So he starts typing HASH. I said, what are you doing? He said, you said to write tag Ed chat. I said, no, number sign Ed chat. So that's about the level we were at several months ago. But here we are in a shindig now.
Yeah, now we're in a shindig, and Mickey was the former co-author of this book, and he'll be looking for work in other places. So maybe Stephen and Tom, you get a job from it. Shindig.
Anybody want to be a chief academic officer?
Yes, it was a fast learning curve.
It was.
And Tom is right, and thanks to Tom's support and others, we really have grown. And I've been actually paying, and I do this purposely. I pay attention to it, and I write out, and I'm always intrigued when people follow me and tweet what I say, because it really makes me think somebody's listening.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it's not my 4 children. So let's jump right into this, and we chunked this up a little bit to kind of expedite things and keep it interesting and so on. And when Mickey and I were preparing this, we had a good laugh because they said, "How awesome is this? We can talk about our whole life's work. For me, over 30 years. Mick, well over 20. A book, and we can do the whole thing in 15 minutes. That's actually quite amazing." So let me just jump into that so we can get at these things. The first chunk we want to talk about is student voice. Then we're going to lead into aspirations, which of course, when you think of aspirations, you got to think of Santa. So we'll make that connection. But around student voice, this is always, I'm at a point in my life where I do as much reflection as I do thinking about kind of where we're going with the work and so on. And I'm struck by the fact that right now we're perceived as visionaries. Like, wow, this is really amazing. What great insights. And we've been, I would have bought that 30 years ago, because 30 years ago, that's what we were talking about. The importance of listening, of what the students have to say, because we believe a couple of things. We believe that students have something to teach us. And that's our fundamental belief in this work. We're not afraid to talk to students. We think they have something to teach us. They have a perspective that we don't have. That drives our work. That drives us as educators. And the other thing that drives us is that we see students as the potential, not the problem. We don't see students, when we ask for their voice and working with them, like we're trying to fix them. Or I want to hear your voice so I can then fix you or analyze you and so on. But it's really the whole point of voice is to have a better understanding of what happens in schools and so on. The first session we did now 10 minutes ago at 3:30 was for the primary level. There's not a great difference between the primary and the secondary piece around voice of where we are today. So again, we'll make these connections when we give some examples, but the whole notion of students, it's gone from, this is a cool thing to do, to creating this movement. I don't say that word lightly. I see this as a movement. This past year alone, I know this because I just got my Delta frequent flyer thing, over 380,000 air miles. 380,000 air miles this year alone, to talk about the importance of student voice and aspirations. So this has gone from, wow, this is a good idea, to, well, that's something we should do, to, wow, people want it. We have countries, Poland, that are adopting this nationally. The work of Andreas Schlechter in the PISA studies, which maybe you're familiar with, looking at that and what's making sense for that. But making so we've gone from a good idea to kind of this movement, and I think this movement is not because the two of us are relentless in this work or because we have a new book out. It's because we've made the connection between the importance of student voice and achievement. And I get achievement's the end game. I don't believe in getting there the way we're getting there at the moment. But nonetheless, I get the fact that we want students to do better academically. I get that. I've got 4 kids. I want them to do better academically. I don't want my kids to go to school and be dumber. So we've taken the student voice piece as a construct. It's been adopted in many places, and we've been measuring the heck out of it to see academic impact is it having, and it is having some, and Mick will get to that in a second. The other driving component around the student voice piece, it's not a survey, because it's a real misinterpretation about that. Well, you know, we've got this survey, and it is a good survey that Corwin does for us, but that's not the end-all be-all. Giving a kid a survey and having them fill it out and you getting responses back does not make, oh, check, did student voice. But what are they telling us? Why are they telling us these things, and how is it impacting the teaching and learning environment as a component? The other thing I tell people all the time is student voice does not mean just listening to somebody verbally. You can hear kids with your eyes. So if I see a student sitting by themselves in the cafeteria, I don't need them to take the survey and say, I don't feel like I belong. When I see a kid bored out of their mind in school and doing this, I don't need to have them do a survey and say, well, you know what, I'm bored in school. So when we work around student voice, it's around using all our senses. What are we hearing? What are we seeing? And, you know, basically this conversation about what it means as a student from their perspective, not our perspective. And that's the other driving force of this work, I think, is, I know this is the other driving force of our work. Our past is present or future. Our past is our past, and the student's future is their future. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we need to be smart enough to realize they're closer to it than we are. So what do they think about it? And when we look at all the data, and we have lots of data, and again, Mickey's going to talk about that in a minute. When we look at the data, there's really 3 things they're telling us over and over and over again. The first thing is you need to know I matter as a student. As an individual, you need to know I matter. The second thing you need to understand is that we matter collectively. So don't forget for a second that I matter as a student, but then realize that we're a collective, we're a group, we're an entity. Don't forget us as students. And the third component, which really drives home this whole work for us, and I don't think teachers realize this, is that you matter. You matter as an educator. And so a lot of teachers say, well, no, that's not what they say. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that is what they say. We've surveyed close to 1 million kids now. So with all the data that's out there, keep those 3 things in mind that students are telling us around their voice, their actions. Is that 1, I matter, know me as an individual. 2, we matter collectively as a group of students. And 3, you matter because you impact my learning every single day that I go to school.
Yeah. So let's look at some of that data that Russ was talking about. That slide, Steve, thanks. And if you double click that image, I believe, on your computer screen, it will get bigger for you. So it'll take up the whole screen instead of just be up there in the back of the room. When we talk to kids, and Russ said, at this point, over 10 years, certainly we've surveyed 1 million kids or more, talked to hundreds of thousands of kids in that same period in focus groups. But what we're looking at here is the most recent data. So from our My Voice survey, now it's going to be called Student Voice, but the most recent iteration of 66,000 kids who took the survey last year in grades 6 through 12 during the 13-14 school year, 234 schools across the United States. So it's a accurate representative sample of schools. In most schools, this is what your survey results are very likely to be. There'll be slight variations. But when we look at just specific questions about student voice, there's a way in which the whole survey is student voice, right? But these 2 specific questions, 47% of students say they have a voice in decision-making at school. So about half the kids in the country believe they have some say in what's going on in their educational environment, their learning environment. It goes back to what Russ was saying earlier, but this idea that as teachers and students, adults and students should be partners in the learning environment, partners of one another. A group of well-meaning adults do everything for kids, But do we have a partnership? Do we enjoy a voice in decision-making in school? Half the kids say, not so much. And the other half say, yeah. 52% of students say teachers are willing to learn from students. So not only are kids saying, I don't have a voice, but about half the kids, the same half of kids, when you look at when you cross-tab that, the same group of kids say, not only do I not have a voice, the teachers, if I had a voice, the teachers wouldn't be willing to listen to me. So we see a pretty even split there around student voice. We can do better. We believe we can do better. We've seen schools. There's people in this webinar I know, we're going to drag them up on stage later, who are working in schools doing our work that have raised the level of student voice in their schools. Why is it important? One, I think we get to better solutions when the kids become our partners. Their perspective on the system, their view of the world is different than ours. I'm always stronger when I have a partner whose point of view is different than me. So I think we get the better solutions for things like dropout and tardy and all the things in schools that are difficulties in school. But one of the main reasons to improve student voice in school is this other statistic you see here, which is based on an odds ratio. So students who believe they have a voice in school are 7 times more likely to be academically motivated than students who do not believe they have a voice in school. So I guess you could pep talk academic motivation. Hey kid, work harder, study more, do better homework. And you might get somewhere with that. But you could also just be willing and open to listen to students, make them believe they have a voice in decision making, and those kids 7-fold are going to do their homework, study harder for tests, participate more in class. And this is what the numbers tell us, but we hear it all the time in focus groups as well, that kids work harder because they believe are open to their voice and their participation.
Yeah. And it goes right back to those 3 points. When they do that, because we listen, they think, rightfully so, they matter to us.
Right.
And we work harder for people that they think matter.
Right.
I mean, it's so common sense. You wonder why we wrote a book.
Yeah. Who would ever buy a book?
Who would do that?
So we're going to try out this Shindig thing. It's one of the very cool features of Shindig that you can get in groups with other people, as Steve described earlier. And our first question for group discussion is, what are the barriers to student voice in school? So you might consider, general world of education, what are the barriers? The way we do school these days, what are some of the features there that are barriers to student voice? Or you might think about concretely something in your school, something very practical that's in the way of student voice in your building, either one of those. So Steve will come on and give some further instructions, but it really is just basically about clicking on people's boxes and getting in a group. And we'll take about 7 minutes with this first group discussion, because you'll be finding your way for a couple minutes before you actually start chatting about the question.
Corso said it exactly right. Just click on someone else's image and form a group. I can see there's already a couple groups that are starting to form. Don't hesitate to just jump into a group and start a conversation. And yeah, so there looks like there's some great groups that are forming. So we'll give you about 7 minutes to kind of get through things. That'll take us to about 10 minutes after the hour.
We'll bring us up on stage now. Okay, great. Well, hopefully you had a chance to chat about that question. We are going to pull some of you up on the stage to share with us what was in your group. But we have a couple of students in the room with us, and they have to split soon. So we want to get them up on stage. So can you up either and or, I don't know if you do more than one, John Bates, Joy Jamigan, or IKEA, if I'm saying their names right. Could you pull one of those students at a time up onto stage? Because I'm sure they might have something to say about student voice. And we want to get them before they go. Let's see who's coming up. There we go. Joy. Hey, Joy, what school are you in?
I'm at Somerville High School in Massachusetts.
Oh, Somerville, yes. I was just there a couple weeks ago with you. Stand Up, Speak Out conference. So what do you want to share with this room full of educators about student voice in your school, or what your thoughts are about it? What are the barriers? What's working?
Well, at my school, there is a lot of opportunities for student voice, so it's not really a problem. It's more like we all have ideas, but it's kind of hard to make them happen.
So moving from your voice to having actions take place. What's in the way of that?
A lot of it's like time and organizing it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What is the avenue for student voice in your school? You have a special committee or a club or is that?
Yeah, we have a culture committee that it's made up of teachers and students that we meet like once a month.
So I know this, so I'm asking her questions I know the answer to, but in Somerville, one of the things they've gotten to now is a full-on partnership of decision making. So the kids don't operate separately from the adults who are decision makers. There's a group, the culture, as they said, of the building, that's distinct from the curriculum and things like that. And they work together, they work in partnership, and it's great. You've been doing that for how many years, Joy?
That started last year when we separated, but the culture committee has been going on for 4 years, I think.
Yeah, that's right. That's great. Well, thanks for joining the webinar, Joy. And thanks for hanging in there with the timing for this, because we know you're probably a busy student at this time of year.
And go Bruins, because I see the Bruins banner.
Oh, the hockey banner. Yeah,
The
yeah.
hockey banner, what are you?
Well,
from
they're the
New
Highlanders.
York?
Somerville is the Highlanders.
We're all Bruins.
What about John or IKEA? Can we bring them up too, Steve? One of the other two kids? Somerville, that district that Joy is in, has been doing aspirations work about 8 years now. Is that, yes, am I saying your name right? I don't think I am. I think, how do you say your name? IKEA, is it?
She's in the mall.
I see you're on the phone.
How cool is that?
That is cool. Oh, no, that's a school. That's like an after-school program in the background, but we can't hear you. I think she's on the phone, Steve, with Julie. So can you pull us down for a minute and pull Julie up there real quick?
Julie in. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Here we go. Hold on.
I'm being brought to the. Hi, IKEA, are you on the phone? Okay, great. Why don't you explain to us about what you do for student voice at your school? All right, so I'm on the phone with IKEA from Conway High School, and she's going to talk and tell you about what they do at Conway High School for student voice. And if you can't hear her, I will kind of repeat and translate. So IKEA, you can go ahead.
Yes, you can't hear us, so you're going to have to translate.
Okay, so she said they've been working on a club to bring students together because a lot of students felt disconnected. Students need to feel connected before they have a voice. So a student leadership team called the Q team, which IKEA is a part of, they work on now. IKEA's also had the opportunity to help out pick out devices for a personal learning device. So they picked out a tablet when they were deciding between, are we going to do like the Galaxy or the iPad? So she's had some voice on that. And she's the most recent project that they're working on is they are going to help co-teach a lesson with a teacher to increase fun and excitement. So involving students in the co-design process to make learning more engaging.
That's awesome. So decision making at all levels there, from the classroom, co-teaching, right up to choosing devices for the whole building. That's really great. I think we have one more student, John. Is right? Is John still? Does John hang in with us? John Bates, do you see him, Stephen? Conway, by the way, is in South Carolina, in Horry County, South Carolina. They're in the second year of doing aspirations work there. So if we don't hear from John, maybe some educator. There we go. Oh, there's Stephen. So Stephen, maybe we'll start to bring some.
Yeah, John's here. I can't get into. For whatever reason, I just can't bring him up on stage. I don't have the option to bring him up on stage. He's here,
All
but
right.
I can't.
So
Can't bring him up. Yeah.
All right.
Well, hi, John.
Hi, John. Sorry about that. So let's bring up a couple of people. Raise your hand to bring up what you talked about in your group about what are the obstacles to student voice that you see either in education generally or in your building specifically. So if someone from a group could raise their hand, and we'll bring you up on stage, and you can share what you got.
What's that you on here?
I like when our video is on that.
Can you move us?
So somebody's got to raise their hand, or we'll just drag you right up there. I drag up Diane.
You just making up names?
No. Oh. Diane Burbank. Drag her up there. She works in one. There we go. I don't know who that is.
Diane,
There she
you
is.
did get drunk up.
Hey, Diane.
Hi, Diane.
Oh,
Hi,
can we
everybody.
hear you?
Hi, Ross. Hi, Mickey.
Hey, it's so good to see you.
I can hear
Tell
you
everybody-
guys and see you.
We can hear you. Tell everybody what school you're from and what you talked about in your group as obstacles to student voice.
I'm from Woodside High School in California, where all the scary rain is today. And we talked about obstacles, being afraid of what teachers might hear, and resources, time being a resource, and money being a resource.
Diane has been with us for a couple of years now, a few years, I guess, and just doing an admirable job at the high school. Thank you for that. And Diane raises an interesting point around the teachers being fearful to hear what students are saying. And, that's one level of it. But the other level, which maybe thinks that with Diane speaking, it takes a pretty brave administrator to also want to hear what students are saying. So, I agree. I think teachers being fearful of, afraid what they're going to hear, that is a barrier. But I think another bigger, just as big of a barrier, if you're in a school where the administration does not want to hear voice or afraid to hear voice of what they're going to hear, it doesn't matter how brave the teachers are, it's not going to happen. So I think from the work in the schools, if this doesn't come together as a unifying force, it doesn't work. In the sense that teachers have got to be willing to listen. The administrator has to believe it's important that we listen to students in real, genuine ways. And the third component about this, we're going to flash aspirations in a minute, but the other piece is this. Students need to be prepared to share their voice. Students want to have a voice. I'm not sure they know how to exhibit it well yet. We talk a little bit about that in the book, where you just can't assume that students are going to tell us what they think. There's a trust issue, there's a respect issue. So a really critical point about the teachers, could potentially be a barrier if they don't want to hear what they have to say. But the administration, and Diane is the antithesis of this, she is not afraid to hear what students say. Matter of fact, wants to hear what students and staff say for that matter. But that other third component is students need to be prepared to speak.
Yeah, and it's a key linchpin, the administrator there, because as Joyce shared, the student, one of the frustrations when kids do, so they're there at Sarville having a voice, they have a forum for it, we train them how to do it, but then it doesn't go to action. And it's not that we're doing everything they say, but they don't see the connection, and that's sometimes because of fear, administration is not fully on board, and then it starts to frustrate kids. They start to withhold their voice. Right. So why bother?
Yeah, and I think in Diane's school in particular, when you go there, and I was there last year actually, what's really nice about it, it's a way of being there. This isn't like a special event anymore. It's what they do.
Yeah,
it's a given.
Emergent way of being.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Diane, for sharing that.
So I'm a little concerned about our time. I don't know, Steve, do you think we should move on to the next topic probably, or maybe pull one more person up on stage from the group?
What have we done?
Well, okay. Pull up one more person. There we go. Oh, or not.
Got about 25 minutes left. So yeah, if anybody wants to go ahead and raise their hand, I will bring you up on the stage.
Bring someone else up.
Or we'll recruit
Or
somebody
drag you
else.
up.
Oh, drag you. This is literally drag you up on stage.
It is. Yeah, that's good. It is funny when not being able to see everyone who's in the room.
All right. So
Okay, we'll move on then to the next topic if we're lucky. We're gonna have another opportunity to do this. So so maybe the next round you'll go for it. We're gonna move on to
this thing. Okay, great. I guess we're going to talk about aspirations right now.
Sound good?
So one of the things from listening to student voice, aside from the notion of I matter, we matter, and you matter as the educator, is we started to learn that the goal of school, obviously, is not just academic achievement, but to students reach their fullest potential, at least from our perspective, that's the goal of schools. And we saw it in there in different ways. So the words that we use are, we want kids to have aspirations. It's in schools' mission statements. It's in, you hear people talking about, oh, we need people with aspirations. This community has no aspirations. This kid has no aspirations. But when we started to unpack the word, we realized there were two dimensions to it. Because I think when people say aspirations, they're always thinking about the future. Well, you know, they're not thinking about the future. They don't have any goals and so on. But we realize that there are two dimensions. It's not just being able to dream, but it's also the ability to do and the desire to do. So the way we define aspirations is the ability to set goals and think about the future, but being inspired in the present to get there. And that is just not a natural thing. Students are all over the place around their level of aspirations, their level of dreaming and doing. And when Mickey and I were putting together the book, we realized to be a real educator in this world, you need to have a quadrant.
Yeah.
So we had ours made up on a bar napkin, actually, of dreaming and doing. And when you look at that, those two dimensions, dreaming and doing, are, from our perspective, make up aspirations. So if I am low dreamer and a low doer, I'm just there. I'm in this hibernation state. I show up, I don't cause trouble, but I'm a non-entity in schools. And you see this in schools that you work with.
Yeah, you know, kids who are, you know, sleepwalking through the building, basically, you know, not literally, obviously. I've done so many observations where kids will come in and put their head down on the desk and sleep, and maybe the kid's got a job or something, and you never know, you know, why that kid is sleeping. Something had happened at home that night. But, you know, every class, you know, so it's a problem. Kids who are disconnected not only from their future, but really even disconnected from what's going on presently around them. It's something I see too often.
Well, and I think we see it too often because it's easy to leave the kids there.
Yeah.
They don't
bother us.
They don't bother us.
Yeah,
They're just
yeah,
there.
yeah.
They'll show up on time. They leave on time. They're not causing havoc.
Yeah.
They're there. And it's an easy thing for us to lose.
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are, percentages of kids in different quadrants, because I think people move in and out of these quadrants all the time. But they are one of the groups to ignore.
Yeah.
They're by design. They're ignorable.
Right.
Because they're just there, and you know, they basically have a bag over their head.
Yeah.
The other dimension, which is interesting, which we see a lot of in schools, is when you're high in dreaming, low in doing, you're in this imagination state. These are the kids that tell us everything we want to hear. Don't worry, my homework's getting done. No worries, I've got my assignment all taken care of. I'm going to do better this semester. Oh yeah, of course I'm going to college. Yet to apply. Or to do anything to get prepared for college or anything like that. Or, oh, of course I have a summer, oh, do you plan on having a summer? Yes, of course I'm going to have a summer job. Have you applied? Oh, of course I'm going to get this through divine intervention. The challenge with the imagination state, we're attracted to those kids, not the kids, those adults. We're attracted to those people because it's this constant reinforcement of, don't worry, I got it under control. Yes, everything's good. But there's some real downsides to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The kids tell you what they want to hear. I want to be a lawyer, or I'm going to get an A, or we know whatever the term of the future is. But there's never that effort in the present. You tell that story in some of your keynotes. The kid you talk to who's going to play in NFL football, but he doesn't play a sport. He's a high school kid, a high school junior, if I remember the story right. To sweat, so it wasn't that he was injured or anything like that. And I talk to lots of kids. They want to be athletes. They're going to be millionaires by the time they're 30, but when you ask them, what are you doing? Oh, that's fantastic. Go for it, I would say. What are you doing right now? They look at you like you're the one who's said something funny.
Right. Yep. And then you get the other extreme. So you go the other way. And if I'm low dreaming and low doing, I mean, in high doing, low dreaming, I'm in this perspiration state. I'm one of the hottest working people on the planet. We see a lot of these kinds of kids in alternative education programs, where the first one's there, the last one's to leave. They hate Fridays because they're, and they're hardworking kids, except they don't know what they're doing next week. Never mind what they're doing in the future. And when we're talking about doing in the future, rarely do we ask students what do they want to be. We're asking students, who do you want to become as a person? And I don't mean be someone you're not, but I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to make a difference in this world. I want to do those kinds of things. So our issue for education and aspirations is not about what you're going to do, because I could care less what you're going to do. Who are you? Who are you as an educator? Who are you as a student? What do you stand up for? What don't you stand up for? But the students in that category, interestingly enough, when I look at the data that we have in places, I see the upper middle class in imagination state. They have, I don't know, I don't know from a sociological perspective, but they're in that state up there because they've either been told they can do anything they want to do and something's going to be handed to them, or they get something to be handed to them. Or where I see a blue collar working class environment. So I see this in really dead rural areas where they're in this perspiration state, some of the most hottest working people on the planet, but they don't have the role models they need to kind of move up to the upper quadrant of high dreaming, high doing, and aspirations.
There's another phenomenon in this category too, the perspiration category. They say, I think it's created by a kind of test culture, where kids are working really hard to pass tests, but beyond the test, there's no point of it. Like they don't get any point of it. There's a line in an educational documentary where a young woman, a young girl taking AP French, says to her mother, "Thank God I passed the AP French test. Now I never have to speak French again." And that culture of really ramped up test taking, but then the test is over, so this has nothing to do with my future anymore, what I just learned. I think that's in that perspiration category.
Oh, too. I think that the thing with these 4 quadrants, which is critically important to understand, this isn't like a Myers-Briggs test where you're going to be typecast in a specific. Kids move in and out of these quadrants, not only on a daily basis, but sometimes from a class basis. In one of my classes, I could be in hibernation state. Another class, I could be in perspiration state to get to yoga. I'm working really hard, but I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what more I'm working. So again, this is a framework to think about. We like sharing this with teachers, particularly at the secondary level, because the message to them is when you're teaching 20, 30 kids in a classroom, every one of your kids in there is falling in one of these categories. So I could have a half a dozen kids in hibernation, half a dozen in imagination and perspiration, hopefully a few in aspirations that are there working hard for the right reasons. And it becomes very challenging for us. And our message that you're going to give them in just a second here is that you can't treat all the kids in the same in every category. The challenge for us is what are we doing to move kids from those 3 outliers there into that aspirations piece?
Yeah, with high dreaming, high doing. My efforts are for the point of the future I see for myself. I'm working on my own best interest towards who I want to become.
Right. The other thing I would say before you share this challenge for them is that this is not an age issue. As a former principal, when we were doing this work together, I was always thinking I could put my staff, and not my current staff because they're perfect. No, not you ever. But when at the high school, I could start putting my faculty in there. Well, I got half of them over here. I got a couple of them over here. Oh my God, the imagination people who I love, make me nuts.
I'll do it tomorrow.
They'll do it tomorrow, which will never get done. Or the people that are on every single committee that nothing ever gets done.
Right.
And the people in the back of the room reading the paper. And during a faculty meeting. So again, this is not an age issue. It's not a gender issue. It's kind of a fact of breaking out dreamers and doers. And how do we connect those together? Hence the challenge.
So the question, again, for grouping, we'll take 5 minutes this time because hopefully you've figured out the mechanics of it all, is for each perspiration quadrant. So when you consider someone in imagination or hibernation perspiration, for each one of those quadrants, have a chat with some of your colleagues from around the country here, around the globe even. What motivates them to move to aspiration? Or when you consider yourself as a hibernator sometimes, or someone who's merely just working hard with no point in mind. What motivates you? What motivates people, your students, your staff, to move out of one of these 3 categories where dreaming and doing are not together into a place where dreaming and doing are together, aspiration? So 5 minutes for that.
I just thought it. So you are. No, I mean that. You know I mean that. I can make a public announcement to tell everybody.
Okay, that's great. So Steve just alerted us that we've lost a lot of people. Maybe the internet is shivering at 5:30 or something.
Or because they bored out of their minds.
Maybe we just completely bored. I blame you. So we'll blame each other and we'll sleep at night. So raise your hand again. It's the same deal as last time to share what your conversation was up on the stage. How do you get people out of low dreaming, low doing, or low dreaming or low doing up into that quadrant where aspirations happen? What motivates them? You put your hand up in the air, Steve will bring you up. If there's anybody at all in the room, even is that me just down there in the corner?
Is that just you?
No, it's Lisa. We got two Lisas, but that's about it.
Hi, Lisa Kinnaman.
Who can we drag up there? Do you see someone? Okay, here we go. I like. Oh, Peter's back.
Peter, see,
Yeah.
we can always count on you 'cause Peter.
Right.
Way to go, baby. Turn up the heat in the house and take your coat off.
No, I can't. It's so toasty warm in Maine. Moving kids to aspirational, it ties perfectly into the first part of talking about student voice. When the atmosphere is created from day, when the teacher has given trust, given respect to get respect, you give to get, and it becomes a collaboration. When students feel invested, they will raise the bar themselves. They'll self-police. You can create protocols in class to make sure the kids are tracking each other and lifting each other up. So it really starts with them. The role of the teacher, for me at least, is to just help put them in that position, create the atmosphere, bring my passion to the table, and create a space where anything that they say or want to do is going to be respected. And it's my job to facilitate that conversation in class.
No, that's right on.
It's right on target. So what's interesting about that, Peter, is one of the things we talk a lot about is the notion of self-worth, and that's exactly what you're talking about. This notion that you matter. It's hard to be successful if you believe beforehand you can't. And I love what you said. You start that from day one.
Absolutely. And it's on the teacher to start that.
Absolutely it is. We can't assume it's going to happen from the student. And
Yeah.
It's about giving respect to get respect. And the same thing is about voice.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Such a lot of teachers, I don't know if old school is the right word, but they're waiting for the kids before they give respect. I would say you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yep.
You have to start that process as the adult, as the grown-up. You're going to teach them what respect is, even in the face of their disrespect, if they're being disrespectful. And then the mutuality begins, the reciprocal begins, and you go down that path that Peter was describing very, very well.
Yep.
Someone else want to come up and share their thoughts on what gets kids, anybody, staff, into an aspirations category? Maybe while waiting, Russ, for someone to call. We did hear from John, that other student who we weren't able to bring up there. We heard from him through Julie. He's still on, apparently, so he actually answered this question, and he talked about relevancy. Mm-hmm. Make the material relevant to me. Make it matter to my real life, my everyday life, or my future life. But just some kind of rote exercise, a worksheet doesn't apply to anything I can figure out. That doesn't help me aspire. That's what puts me in maybe a merely perspiration stage where I'm just doing the work. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, echoing what Peter just said, is relationship. Yep. Create a relationship with me, build trust with me, show me that I matter to you, and I will absolutely work harder in your class. I'll aspire in your class if you do that. And we talk to kids like John all the time in focus groups. They tell us exactly the same thing. Teachers who I believe care about me, and we've actually heard kids say, "I will withhold my best effort from a teacher who I believe doesn't care." Yep. Even though that doesn't hurt anybody but me, really. Right. But I won't give a teacher the satisfaction of thinking they're doing their job well. So yeah. Anybody else to bring up there before we move on to the Santa Claus portion of our final and Santa Claus portion of our time together?
And some would argue the most important.
No doubt at this time of year, the most important.
The most important. So let's move on to that, and we'll also give you our Twitter account too, so you can ask us questions as you deem necessary. Things because of the holiday season. Oops, Steve's coming back on. Oh no, Zoom thing. Thank you, Steve. One of the things when I was a kid, and sadly even now, I do my little Santa wish list. And what we thought would be nice is if you had one wish for Santa around your school and what you're doing currently as an educator, what would be on that wish list? And we don't need to break into groups. We only have a couple minutes left, but I'd love to hear what's on your wish list, because I interesting enough, actually still do believe in Santa. And yeah, just in case he is real, I don't want to cut myself off out of any presents.
Anything to do with the white hair, the red jacket?
Yeah, the no belly. See, pretty slim there, baby.
Kind of affinity.
Exactly.
You're the Santa Claus that has to be fattened up. So raise your hand. We'll bring you up to share your what's at the top of your wish list for schools? Someone's coming up.
Yeah.
I think so. If Steve goes away, that means someone's coming up. Oh, Steve's coming. Steve's
The
gonna
ice
share.
with
What's on
this
your
one
list?
and share what's on my wish list for teachers, and that I hope that when we go back to school, or you don't even have to wait until you go back to school, but I want and wish that more educators would just sometimes and some days forget about him and remember that they're teaching human beings and teaching kids, and to listen to what kids have to say. So the student voice piece is very important. And a lot of teachers throw that around. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I listen to my students. Sure, yeah, my students have voice and choice in their classroom. Really listen to what kids are doing and saying and thinking and reflecting, and make them truly a part of that of the classroom and the learning process. And I really wish that more teachers just took time to listen to kids and listen to what they have to say. And I think they would be really taken aback by the intelligence and the wisdom that kids can have.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, you know what? Stephen, you raise an interesting point, because one of the first time, we didn't mention this time, I am always surprised at what I hear from kids, and God knows I've been doing this for a long time, but they cease to always surprise. They cease never not to surprise me.
Yeah.
They're always saying something like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And I think the piece that Diane talked about earlier was some of the teachers being fearful of this. If they really listen to what kids say, we'd be dumbfounded at how supportive they are of us. And they tell us things like, I wouldn't be a teacher. That job is too tough.
Yeah.
This is what I would do differently. And so I love that whole notion of, one, making it safe to share that, but also not being afraid to be surprised. Because I will tell you, the surprises are going to be positive, not negative.
Thoughtful,
Yeah.
willing to make a difference. It always is much, much, much better than the fears of imagining.
Yeah, no, I think both of us will. Go ahead, what?
No, I was just saying, can we maybe hear from one other person before we share our Santa Claus lists and wrap up? Some other not afraid person want to raise their hand and say what they hope Santa brings to their school this year. Either there's no one left or no one brave enough. Oh, here we go. Yvonne. Hey, Yvonne, what school are you from?
I'm at Conway Middle School. Conway Middle School. Yeah. And I just wanted to share, yes, South Carolina. I thought it was exciting, our last visit, when you all came to us last week, how just working with a teacher and students, when the two teachers and students met together. So we want to do more of that. And so I created a little bond with the 3 students that I was with that I never get to see during the day. I teach 8th grade, and it was 2 6th graders and a 7th grader. And now, so when I see them in the hallway, I can call them by their first name. And that little experience was powerful to me. And I just think that if we can get all the teachers to do that and notice kids that they don't normally work with, but really get to know their names. And they were more comfortable confiding to someone that wasn't their current teacher. So I would just certainly, my wish list would be to see more of that in our school, because it made a difference in me. And I think if we really branched out, it would make a difference in the school as a whole.
Yeah, she stole mine. You stole mine, because that's at the top of it. Every single student in the school knows that there's at least one adult, one Yvonne, one Peter in the school somewhere, in their school, in the school they're in, that believes in them, that they can talk to if they're having some kind of social problem or some kind of academic problem, that there's an adult in that school who cares. And so, that project that Yvonne is involved in, that makes that clear to kids, in this case, 3 kids, not just 1. But if every teacher did that, I'd get what I want for Christmas.
Yeah.
How about you?
Mine is very similar to that. If I had one wish, I would wish that teachers would believe in students as much as students believe in themselves. They need that. We need to break down that expectation gap. And I think if teachers had a little higher expectations of what these kids can deliver, things would be a little differently in school.
Yeah.
So listen, I want to thank everybody. I also want to, if Peter, if you're still on, I would love for you to just write to either Mickey and I. I want to send you a student voice book, because Santa actually texted me and said, you might not know this, but Peter's wish list for Santa is your book.
Oh,
so
there you go.
I want to send you a book because you have bared with us for both of these sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you send us a text with your email, not your email, but your address, we'll put one right in the mail to you. So Peter and others and
Diane.
and Tom, Diane, everybody that was on. I know Lisa was on. Lisa came in who couldn't get on to talk about the device she was on. But thank you all for hanging in here with us. And I do love this format, and we'll be seeing more of that in the future. So
Yeah, cool.
thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
Webinars, so can't thank you enough. You've got their website and their Twitter handles and Facebook page there on the stage, so you can be sure to get in touch. And this was recorded, so you can check it out on the EdChat Interactive archive page by visiting edchatinteractive.org. There you can see all of our archives, and you can see our upcoming events. We have a few more in December, and then a couple coming up in January. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.